Good afternoon, everybody. This is Joe from the Middle Ground Mike. Just seen some posts about some football stuff, so I figured, let's do a quick update on this. Fox posted their post draft power rankings. Um, I was a little surprised, because Green Bay for seems like the first time in forever or if ever drafted a receiver in the first round, and they dropped it to 10th. Because I didn't see that coming. Casey to me very rarely ever gets a whole lot of praise for their drafts because they're just so good. So it's, I guess, I don't know, maybe just have the same pizzazz. But the Falcons fell 4 spots to 22. The Jaguars fell to 21. The Dolphins fell 3 spots. The Saints fell 8 spots. The Browns at least went up. Steelers dropped. Kind of surprised. First play, power ranking is first is the Philadelphia Eagles, the second my Detroit Lions, and third is the Bills. They got the Ravens at fourth, Chiefs at fifth, Washington sixth. I'd be really curious to see hopefully in Washington they can avoid the sophomore slump, which hits a lot of players, but I don't think it'll hit him too bad. He seems to have a good head on his shoulder. So, I thought that was a pretty neat thing that they did. I mean, everybody always does it, right? I know Fox, I believe, gave the Lions a B minus on their draft, and I think I gave them a minus or a B plus right around there. I get why they drafted, you know, middle of the line in the first round. I get it, but I felt like at some point somewhere we should have tried to take a good edge rusher, and I don't think we did that. And even if we sign somebody, hey, this is a younger guy, you know what I mean? Chances are we're going to get somebody who possibly has an injury history. That's what Brett Holmes seems kind of like to do. Marcus Davenport ring a bell. And I'm not against that, but I just wish we'd have got someone to kind of help fill in. I thought that would have helped. Chicago had a really good draft. I'm thinking about that, so that they're definitely going to be a challenge this year. You know, um, Green Bay, I don't know. Jordan Love's just he's kind of an enigma, right? He like shows these huge bright flashes that he's going to be like so great, and you're like, oh, okay, that's awesome. Good for Green Bay. Even though, hey, they're the arch rival in my division, so I'm not like praising them per se, but hey, I mean, they just seem to somehow quarterback after quarterback, Favre and then Rodgers, possibly Jordan Love, but I see a lot more inconsistency out of Jordan Love than I seen out of the other two. So maybe it's just different, but hey, it could work out. Um, the Lions did what they could to protect Jared Goff, per usual. That second round pick in the mullet fits Dan Campbell perfectly. He's going to fit right in. The receiver pick, I get it. Still a little confusing with who they picked. I don't get it, but is what it is. They know more than me, so the Panthers and the Titans seem to have done pretty well in the power rankings. Titans went up 3 spots, Panthers went up two, 25 and 26. So that's kind of now a story that just came out recently. The allegations against Justin Tucker. I don't really want to go into it too much because I don't. I just know what was put out there is and he man, if he's not there, I know he wasn't the team, but man, he won that team a lot of games. I was at Ford Field, God, I don't know, was it 10 years ago or so? Lions could have won the game, but Justin Tucker set an NFL record and boom, kicked the field goal, won the game. It is what it is. But, if he's not out there, what part, because with a kicker like Justin Tucker, he's more than just a kicker to that team, right? Not just a longevity, but he gives them an edge, right? Like Jake Bates did last year with the Lions, and sometimes still conservative, and he had some inconsistencies, but there's just certain things like, hey, clutch, right? Boom. Now if they have to go after a new kicker, I'm telling you, I don't know if anybody remembers Nate Freeze, I believe was his name. I think Martin Mayhew drafted him like 2014, 15, somewhere in there. I think he was like a record-setting kicker in all of college, and then dude stunk it up in the NFL. You would have never thought that with how good he was, right? So it's kind of like a lot of players when they come from college to the NFL, they struggle, but yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see the difference in the Baltimore Ravens if Justin Tucker is not out there. So, you know, um, thoughts out to them, man. Because that's just not an easy situation for any team to be in. Um, the schedules are coming out pretty soon. I've seen um, a couple predictions without actually seeing the schedule. People are saying like the Lions, I believe I've seen 12-5. Then they had the Bears, and then they had the Vikings, and they had the Packers. Um, I can see that. I just think, especially with the Packers, it all depends on Jordan Love, right? Can he be a little bit more consistent? Can some of the players in Green Bay stop shooting themselves in the foot against my Lions? Some of those games the Packers could have won, but they were, just like my Lions of old, man. Their players made some bonehead decisions and gave the Lions the edge. So that's rough. But that's just a quick update on NFL. We're really on a whole lot to talk about right now. I'm sure everybody knows, still Matt Stafford's still in LA. Jim Harbaugh worked his usual miracle out there in San Diego. He definitely redeemed that team for his first year there. Let's see if he can keep Justin Herbert on the way. Moving forward and keep getting better. But they ranked him 8th, and I guess I'm just not convinced the Chargers are there yet. But I mean, Jim Harbaugh has a long track record of turning things around, right? So we shall see. The Cowboys moved up 3 spots. I don't know. It just seems like every move the Cowboys make anymore, it's just one bad move after another. Like, it just doesn't seem like there's any, like, it's just Jerry Jones and just bad move after bad move after bad move after bad move. And, quote unquote, America's team, right? They deserve better than that. Any fan base deserves better than that. Not just the Cowboys, but being a Lions fan, I went through a whole lot of bad decisions in my lifetime being a fan of them. And seeing what's happening in Dallas, man, it's a nightmare for the fans there, and probably a lot of the players too. The players are probably going, hey, we need help on A, B, and C, and they're just not doing anything. So it's kind of like, what the heck? I was really surprised to see the Falcons fall. I think I said that. The Dolphins and Togalova, man, with the whole CTE lawsuits and all that, at some point, I feel like the NFL's got to tell certain players, hey, maybe being on the field playing is not your thing. I know that's not anybody's place to say yes or no per se, but, at what point, legality, responsibility, moral responsibility do they tell one of these guys, hey, it's time to hang it up? Offer them a job, doing something else. Because a lot of these guys are like, I can tough it out. I need to take care of my family, da da da. Well, if you're permanently disabled or something of that nature, you're not going to be there to take care of them. So, let's just use some common sense here. But, it is what it is. It's just kind of going off on a tangent. If anybody has anything else to bring up, let me know. All right, y'all have a good day. Hey, everybody, it's Joe from the Middle Ground Mike. Good afternoon. Doing another episode today on the UFL. I'm a, Panthers fan. I like sport football, to be fair. Right now, with they're tied with the DC Defenders, actually, in terms of record now, but the Panthers beat the Defenders 38-14. Bryce Perkins, man, he ran all over the DC Defenders, Last week, the DC Defenders came back and marched back, and I forgot again who they were playing, but man, second half, they came back and murdered them. And this week, the Panthers defense locked them down after, a little bit. Man, just Bryce Perkins, I was watching. Wow, man, just wow. What I mean, it was like, he's like he had an oil slick, man. Nobody could just seem to get him down when they needed to. And, I'm obviously like Bryce Perkins, Shout out to the Panthers for giving my Lions Jake Bates. He was the best kicker in the UFL last year. So, thank God. But right now with points allowed and all the stats and everything, the Panthers are technically the best team in the UFL right now, which, last year they were pretty good. The quarterback play wasn't as good as it is this year. Granted, I don't even think he threw for 200 yards today, but if you're putting up 38 points, look at Jared Goff, right? You don't always need to put up massive amounts of points every week. So, It's great that the Panthers rocked it out. You know, I forgot who the leading rusher on the Panthers was. Taua, I think Tyson his name. I'm sorry. He had 19 carries for 99 yards. Here's where Bryce Perkins is dangerous. He had, and this is, just in case I didn't say, this is the Michigan Panthers quarterback. Okay, and this is semi-pro football. This isn't NFL. So he had 9 carries for 90 yards. But he also had a loss of 14, so he had net 76 yards. He had 1 touchdown running. His long was 31 yards, and he averaged 8.4 yards a carry. I mean, for a running back, that's insane. A quarterback averaged 8.4 yards a carry on 9 carries. That's just crazy. That's right. Maybe not as like big as Lamar Jackson per se, but I mean that's like that's some pretty darn good stuff. I think, like I said, he only had, I said that, he only had 188 passing yards. So take that for what that's worth. I thought that was, a neat little thing. He was receiving, where's it at? Malik Turner had 4 catches for 34 yards. Cole had 3 catches for 63 yards. Oaks had 2 for 41. Mariner had 2 for 19. Jalen Moore, 1 for 23, punting, obviously. Their defense was not too shabby at all. Wow, I'm looking at it. Michigan had 27 first downs. Woo! They had 14 rushing, 11 passing, and only 2 by penalty. DC actually had 0 by penalty, so net yards rushing. Panthers had 213. And this is why they say running wins football games. Running the ball wins your football games. The defenders only had 75 yards on 20 attempts, whereas the Panthers had 213 yards as a team on 38 attempts. The difference in average yards per carry: DC 3.8, Michigan 5.6. So that's pretty good. And then I guess Michigan had 3 touchdowns via rushing, so that's not too bad. Total offensive yards, the Panthers had 401, the DC had 325. So that goes to show, little things like that can really hurt you. Where the Panthers got lucky to, not lose it, they fumbled the ball twice, but they recovered it. They recovered their own fumbles. So, that's something that, probably this week they're going to work on, or at least I would hope they would. The Panthers pretty much controlled the ball for the whole game. So, go take that for what it is. I'll take it. That's, overall, it was a pretty good game. I enjoyed watching it. I know the UFL is not as popular as the NFL, but it's still a pretty darn good league to watch. If you ever get a chance, tune in there. Obviously everything's not as super as glamorous as it is in the NFL, but man, those guys play hard. Looking forward to hearing from anybody. Hey, what do you think about the UFL? What do you think about the NFL? Any ideas? Comment and let us know.